set the recording.
So I'm John Taylor. I'm a clinical social worker. My practice is just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. I primarily work with folks dealing with sexual addiction, infidelity and affair, intimate betrayal, recovery. I do a lot of couples work. So this topic of bringing our best to a relationship and making our relationships work is something that I'm really interested in, and I work in it day in and day out. I had the idea for this topic being the ongoing topic of this webinar because I think recovery gives us some really important experiences and really unique tools that make any relationship better. So we look at how we can improve those relationships. So the topic today, and I usually spend about 10 or so discussion / lecture, and then we open it up to any kind of questions or feedback any of you have. The topic today is eye care. And this is a little bit of a different take on self-care because I think for a lot of us in recovery, just the term self-care can evoke some conflict in us. We may have grown up in families or come from systems where anything with self in it was going to be selfish or self-centered. We may have lived years in an addiction where we were selfish and self-centered. We weren't thinking about others. So I think it can be a pretty hard shift to go when we realize in recovery, or we hear from a lot of people in recovery, you got to practice your self-care. You got to do this. I want to look at self-care through the lens of what it brings to our relationships and maybe why we want to care for ourselves in a particular way. So first, I'm going to have you guys think about the answer to this first question, and you can reply in the chat with your responses here. Tammy, can you put up the first question?
There, now it went. So
there we go. So what strengths do you have much less access to when you're tired, angry, scared, or reactionary? So just think about it. The positive things that are usually you, the things that people love about being in a relationship with you, which of those or which one of those do you have less access to when you're tired, angry, scared, reactionary, overextended? So be thinking about that, and we're going to incorporate those into our discussion a bit. So when I look at eye care, this particular perspective on self-care, the reason why we do it is to make our relationships better. The reason why I would say for me, one of the biggest sources of motivation for me working on myself is I have children and I have a spouse who I care a lot about. And number one, I don't want to hurt them in any unnecessary ways. And number two, I want to be a better person for them. I also have a job that I feel the same way about. The better me that I bring to work, the better my clients do, the better my relationships with my coworkers. So I don't think that taking care of ourselves just needs to be about, I really love myself, and so that's why I'm going to take care of myself. Because for a lot of us in recovery, that's a far stretch too. We may not feel a lot of love for ourselves. We may not have a history of knowing how to love and take care of ourselves, but we can be really motivated by the relationships that we're in. So one of the reasons why we want to practice taking care of ourselves is because it makes us better. It brings a better version of us to our relationships. When we're not taking care of ourselves, we're liable to be tired, angry, scared, and reactionary. If you look at those reactions, those are all really basic nervous system reactions to immediate needs. Things like compassion, love, critical thinking, those are all luxuries that we get to do. We get to dive into those luxuries when we have some bandwidth to do so. So taking care of ourselves is a way that we reinvest in the relationship, and we have some responses coming in already. Things that you have less access to when you're tired, angry. So somebody said critical thinking, compassion, and empathy. If you think about the difference it can make in your relationships to come from a critical thinking place, just that ability to slow down, to look at many moving pieces, to think if I put this in motion, what's going to happen down here? I can't tell you how many times in a professional setting, the ability to calmly, critically think has saved me from getting myself fired. Has saved me from unnecessary strife between me and my coworkers. Not that there wasn't something to talk about or there wasn't some legitimate conflict, but my ability to critical think helps me approach it in a way that opens the door to a solution rather than approaching it in a way that just makes sure nobody's going to want to hear me. Somebody said definitely empathy and compassion as well. Somebody said the ability to have an open mind, empathy, compassion. Somebody else said patience, presence, compassion, the ability to hear different perspectives. My need to control can take over, assert myself. Think about what a healthy solution is. Empathy for sure. Somebody else said making decisions. So all of these things.
And there's one more in the questions. It says, I have less access to calm response, my ability to self-regulate, my ability to be relational and mutually caring compassion.
Yeah, great. Thank you all for those responses. It definitely highlights when we are overstretched, when we're spread thin, we don't have the best in us available to give. And that's not a matter of us not wanting to. I think it's a matter of ability. Our nervous system is not set up to give and invest. So one of the reasons why I would advocate taking good care of yourself is because you do care about the relationship and you want to give your best to whatever relationship you're in. So there's a couple of different ways that I think this can apply to people in recovery. First and most obvious, I think, is the spouses of folks who are addicted. When your partner is in active addiction, they don't have access to all of their frontal lobe. They don't have access to their best social skills. They're in an impaired state. And so often the ability to carry the relationship in helpful ways falls on the shoulder of the partner who's not in the middle of addiction. Now, it'd be really easy if you had no emotional response to your partner's addiction, right? You'd just be able to hum along and like, yeah, I know you're impaired, so I'm not going to try to talk to you about reasonable, like logical driven things. I'll disengage. It would be really easy if there weren't emotions involved, but because there's emotions involved and maybe there's even trauma due to the betrayal from your spouse, it's not easy to access this place where we can be calm, compassionate, where we can be decision makers, where we can be empathetic. And so we really have to put some care into ourselves to make room for that to be able to happen. So one of the reasons why we may choose to focus on getting adequate sleep rather than staying up and arguing with our loved one who's just had a relapse, or why we may choose to keep our commitments and show up at work so that we can have a less stressful day instead of driving around and looking for our loved one who's been out all night on a bender, is because we know that if we take care of the basics for us, we can show up and be more helpful to that partner of ours in encouraging them to help themselves, encouraging them to get in to the treatment that they need. I think this ability to kind of see where we need to take care of ourselves, this is really a skill that many people develop in the rooms of recovery. They need to develop in the rooms of recovery early on. Because they may recognize that one of the reasons why they carry resentment for their loved one, whether because they're addicted or they're the partner of an addict, they may carry resentment because nobody is filling their cup. I'm in this relationship because I expected my partner would always be there for me, and they're not there for me, and now I'm just giving and giving, and I have nothing left for me. I do think it's a beautiful picture of a relationship where two people take care of each other and are there for each other. But I think it's the outlier when that's the reality. What's happening more, or what I think we have an opportunity for more often, is to really be taking care of ourselves in a adequate way and inviting our partner in to enhance the care that we have going for ourselves, the love that we feel for ourselves, the security that we provide for ourselves. And that's another reason why I would advocate for this I care approach to self-care, is as I do what I can to take care of myself and make sure that I have access to my calmness, my compassion, my empathy, my strengths. I'm going to be a better partner for you, and I'm not going to overextend myself and overreach into here's the ways you should be taking care of me too. I'll be reaching from a place of strength rather than reaching from a place of I'm about to fall any minute. So this, I think, can show up in the workplace too. If anybody here has a job, this makes me think of my dad. He had a big career change about 15 years ago. And he'd worked at the same place since he graduated college, and this place had like become his family. Over time, it became horribly mismanaged. They weren't able to pay him. It was really, really stressful for him. And I remember him coming home one day from work and saying, I know that he and my mom had been planning this for a while, but he said, I won't be working for 4 months. And at the end of 4 months, I have a new job that I'm going to go to. And my first question was, where's all this money where you're not going to be able to work for 4 months? Because I know we're not wealthy at all. And he said, well, I have a year of vacation saved up. Right? Tammy's eyes just went.
I'm like, yeah.
The man never took vacations. He never took time off. So when he left this job, they had to pay that all out. And that was a blessing at the time where he needed to switch jobs. But I also look at that and think, how could he have done better emotionally if he had taken the vacation that he had as he had it? Like, how much did he bottle up? So we can even get this I care, or this lack of caring for ourselves and even caring for the relationship in a work setting when we may feel like I can't miss, because if I miss, the important things don't get done. And the truth is, not taking the time that we need, or working through weekends, or working off the clock, we may show up more and more depleted every day. We may not show up the kind of passion and excitement we have about the work that we do, or our coworkers, because we're giving too much and not putting enough in our own bank account to be able to give to what matters to us. So this can also, I think, come up as a parent, taking adequate time away from our children to spend time with other adults, to spend time by ourselves. We can feel a lot of guilt in doing that. I like to think that I've trained my kids well enough. I know that they miss me a lot when I'm at work and I'm doing things, but they also understand when Saturday morning rolls around and it's time for me to go get coffee with friends or go hiking or whatever. They know that that's time that makes dad a better dad. And sometimes they'll even say, did you get your hike in this morning? I'm like, no, I didn't. And of course you could perceive that. It really, when we're taking care of ourselves in adequate ways, and it allows us to show up in the relationship and be our most helpful, most authentic, most loving self, the people that we're in relationships with notice that. And instead of it becoming this, what are you taking away from the relationship, we can actually develop this feedback loop where there's support for us in doing that, because we've shown that we're better that way. So let's put in the second discussion question, Tammy.
I will. I'm doing that. And then someone shared, as a fitness instructor, that's how I ended up totally injured and not taking time off. I ended up with spinal fusion.
I think that is a really good example of, I wouldn't even say that's an extreme example. Like, I think that's a good example of how far things can go when we feel so guilty or so unable to care for ourselves in ways that we can give the most. I had a personal trainer a while back who was always injured and always in pain. And the best she had to offer to me, I was working through a back injury at the time. And my physical therapist was saying, when you reach the point of pain, it's time to take a break and do your stretches. And my personal trainer, the best she had to offer was, oh, you're always going to be in pain, just push through it. And I remember thinking at the time, like, well, I know this is your job, and I know that you probably have some knowledge I don't, but that doesn't feel right to me. And it was actually something that we would argue about, because I'd tell her it's time for me to stop, and she'd be like, your session's not over. And I said, oh, it's over, because I'm not hurting my back anymore. But we can really, when we're too stretched, we're not taking care of ourselves, we can actually, I think, bring harm to a relationship. So then the next discussion question, how do you put energy back into the system? What are the most effective ways for you to recharge yourself and to be your best? We've got some answers coming in. Somebody said, daily exercise was my antidepressant. Likely saved my life, by the way. Yeah. I say amen to that.
Yeah.
My mantras were, fight it and drive on. Whenever your body screams, tell it to shut up.
And that's why you had spinal fusion. So
you got the spinal fusion, yeah. Time alone, self-compassion, doing things for myself, making things and being creative. I love this one, making things and being creative, because I think there's some outlets that put energy back into the system that aren't actually about us pulling in. They may be about expression in a way that we don't normally get. I think for me, I have a tradition when I drive home from work on Friday afternoon, I listen to music that I found really meaningful in high school because there was a lot of emotional connection. And it was like, that's when I started branching out and discovering music on my own. And I still really love those artists. And so I'll play something really, really loud in the car and I'll sing out loud. And, I make sure that I don't pull in my driveway until that album is finished and I'm ready to go there. But I think that creative and that self-expression can be a really effective way to recharge. Somebody else said going to a quiet space, reading a book, spending time outdoors, alone time. I think all of these are really great.
There's a couple in the questions too. So,
okay.
So meditate, breathe, self-inquiry, taking a walk in nature, and dancing.
Oh, I love dancing too, and walks in nature. These are all really, really good ideas.
And then there's another one back in chat. So quiet time, reading, a bath, and book or podcast, coloring, painting, sewing, all creative things, walking by the sea or countryside, going for a coffee alone, going to a garden center.
So one more follow-up question that I'd encourage you guys to put in the chat, and then we can get to some of these questions that are coming in. What difference would it make for you in your important relationships this week if you put some energy back in your system first before you went to these key relationships, these important relationships? What could you see being different?
That's mostly right. So
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
That's it. So envision you doing some of that quiet time, that reading, that dance, that creativity. If you were to put some of that in the system first, what difference do you think it would make in some of these important key relationships that maybe most of the time you feel stress in, you feel fear in, kind of doing those habitual cycles that may or may not be really helpful? Somebody said, I would be able to be more present and able to listen and react in the moment.
And somebody said I'd have better clarity, better listening, more compassion, creative solutions, collaboration.
Mm-hmm. I would have more spoons to deal with difficult situations. I don't know if I get the joke there, but I think having more of anything to deal with difficult situations is definitely an asset.
So I had a friend that had a difficult, delicate surgery, and the surgeon did it the first day he was back after a vacation, and the surgeon was so excited about his job performance. He was like, it was like, there is something to having a vacation. He felt like he was on top of his game. And I was like, I'm really glad you just had that vacation and we didn't, have it scheduled the day before you left, so.
Right. Now that's the kind of surgeon I would rather have. I know that my spouse would rather have the me who takes care of himself on the way home from work instead of being on phone calls or even what I listen to. Like I'm always listening to something for work. And if I listen to that on the way home, I don't come home in the right headspace. And as you think about, what you might be able to give this week, if you were to put energy in your own system first, I want you to think about the people that you're wanting to give to, the people in relationships that you love, and think about what a gift that would be to them for you to be able to give that version of you or those best traits in you this week. And also think about what a gift to yourself that would be, to be able to walk away from an interaction and to say, I was able to be really present and to listen. I was able to go into that not reacting so much as I was responding in the moment. What gift would that be for you as well? So that is the concept of I care and the reasons why I want to look at self-care, the difference it makes in our relationships. So we had some questions come in the Q&A.
Sure, and I'll get started with those. So I'm a betrayed partner of a sex addict. It's been 5 months since Discovery Day. He is doing everything and anything to fix things, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like enough for me to feel better. How do I work on feeling special again, and or what can he do to make me feel special again? He met several hundred people during our 20-year relationship and the 6 year prior to meeting me. Again, he's walking the walk, doing the steps, we're going to therapy, etc. But I just don't feel special, and I feel like everything he says and does is just a copy of something he may have said or done with someone else. This partner is feeling stuck. We've been reading all of Rob's books together, doing 4 to 6 of these seminars a week, but I still don't feel special, and I'm starting to feel worse again instead of better. So,
Yeah. That's really painful, and my heart goes out to you feeling that stuck. And even that, I hear in that, with everything that's going on in recovery, I should be feeling different at this point. Bouncing back from an intimate betrayal is not a bouncing back thing. I think it's building back from that. And to people in situations like this, I would just put out a plea to give yourself a lot of time to feel a lot of different feelings. And part of that is going to be loss. That loss of not being special to your partner, or realizing that they, met up with hundreds of different people during the relationship when you thought it was just you. That sense of specialness and that sense of it's just me and you, that's really been rocked to the core. And I think walking the walk is great. I think reading the books is great. I think getting help is great. When there's intimate betrayal, there's also, this comes from the John and Julie Gottman research around marriage therapy. They talk about how when there's been infidelity, we aren't rebuilding we're not repairing a relationship, we're starting over, because the trust was violated on such a foundational level. So I think that's really common with betrayed partners that I work with, is that feeling of we have the spark that often doesn't come until there's been enough time in solid sobriety for your partner and enough healing time for you to go through all the emotions that you've got to go through, to be able to feel all the feelings and to start feeling like you've got your sense of yourself back. And then at that point, I think both people are able to give to the relationship in a way where it starts to feel special again, and it starts to feel like there's a spark there. But 5 months is not, I wouldn't say that, I'm not surprised at 5 months that you're feeling this, because, it sounds like it was definitely a big betrayal. I think doing the right things is good, but the feeling and the trust is going to take some time to come back. So, I would say to people in this situation, don't rush yourself, and don't get too frustrated that it's not feeling that way. Time spent in carefully laying the foundation really makes it so that we can build that structure fast and solidly. I have a couple that I work with. He was addicted to multiple substances and sex addiction. And I worked with them shortly after he got into treatment, and it was really rough. He was not doing everything he could to walk the walk. And in fact, he would say, like, I just want to put this behind us. Like, I'm sober now. I'm not that person anymore. And his spouse was feeling totally overlooked and, totally not seen in the process. Some health problems came up for him, and he was actually hospitalized for a while. And so I didn't see them for about a year and a half. And then they contacted me again, and they said, we finally got the health concerns under control. Like, we really want to come back in and work on our marriage. And part of me was like, I don't know. Like, I worked with you guys before. If nothing's changed, this is going to be rough. And I didn't say this to them, of course, but that's what I was feeling. They came in, and just by virtue of time passing and him to be able to settle more into what he needed in the relationship, they came back and were a different couple. And their relationship is really beautiful now. And they're having conversations now where, to use some of the language of this question, I feel special like I've never felt before in this relationship. And they're both saying that. And it's not that they were just hanging out and doing nothing for the, 2-3 years it took to get there. They were doing the hard work. It's just, it was foundational work, or I would say it was root work. And oftentimes root work we don't see the benefits of until down the road, when the relationship starts growing in ways that it never did before. When, into stable sobriety for both of us, we can have conversations about ourselves and our relationship that would have scared us to death, and we wouldn't have been able to have those conversations before. So keep hanging in there and keep doing the right things. That feeling will come. if it feels like there's some trauma in the way of that, I hope that the therapist you're working with can help you with that, can go there with you, because that doesn't have to last forever, but it's also not a quick fix.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It is very early from a recovery standpoint, and Rob, often talks about, and this is just to give you perspective, not to go, oh my gosh, but it can take a year and a half, but it won't be, it won't be as intense all the time. And
Yeah.
and my experience is that you'll find glimmers where you'll go, well, that was. That in that 5 minutes of, just our interaction, I did feel special. And the self-doubt of, well, he did that, he probably did that with everybody. There'll be just moments, and they'll just be moments at first, but then you'll string a few moments together. So, so it feels really dark right now. And I agree with John, if there's a trauma therapy that, would be useful, engage in that. But just understand that it takes time. It's, it's like if you break your leg, this isn't the same, but if you break your leg, it's not going to heal in 5 minutes. It's going to take time, and you just got to wear the cast, and you got to, so on some level, it's just, committing that, I see light at the end of the tunnel, and he's doing the right things now. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. So, but if there's other resources, you're seeing some great people, it sounds like. So, hopefully they can give you, if an intensive for partners would be helpful or something like that, there's options out there. If you need anything from us, just let me know. So there was a couple of follow-ups in the chat. So one of them was, I'm finding the more I do this and have more present and quality interactions, the amount of time I feel the need to spend with people and the amount of people I need in my life is less, but I feel more connected. I thought that was a beautiful thing to share too. Yeah. And then the spoons, there's apparently the spoon theory by Christine Miserandino. I won't get it right. It's in the chat, and if people want to know that, I can add it to all the attendees. But it says, if you wake up and have 5 spoons to deal with issues, and your spouse is stressed out, you listen and give them a spoon. Then you're working with your coworkers and are being backbiting, so you keep giving away your spoons. You get home, but have no more spoons. Then you get a bill you did not expect, and now you're out of spoons and unable to deal with it. So I've not heard that analogy. So thank you so much for sharing and clarifying that.
I think it would be so helpful from a self-care perspective to quantify it like that and actually count throughout the day how many situations required me to give some extra. And, if I, start the day with 5 spoons and I gave away my 5 spoons by lunchtime, I better be doing something by lunchtime to get a spoon or 2 back, because day's not over yet.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I was like, I think I'm going to, I mean, it's so visual to think about a spoon. So I like that. So. Yeah. Okay, in the Q&A, feeling very raw right now. Last May, I disclosed to my wife of 12 years the nature of my sexual acting out over the duration of our 18-year relationship and marriage. She did the impact statement, and I responded to it. I've been receiving counseling since April of last year. Oh no, April of 17, when I uncovered enmeshment with my mother. Oh, you're asking one of the right people. Child sex abuse and chronic depression. Have been working on addressing these trauma injuries through 12-step meetings and CSAT-led therapy sessions, and as a result, I'm the healthiest that I've been. But my wife is not interested in giving me another chance. The wounds are too deep, and she is on the path to divorce, even though she hasn't said, I want a divorce. We live in the same house in different rooms, and I feel like I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. Question, how do I nurture self-care when I feel I'm acting out, aka me and my destructive self has destroyed my relationship? How do I nurture self-compassion when I am to blame for the dissolution of the marriage?
Yeah, so a couple of
information.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. I'm going to circle back to some of the enmeshment stuff and talk about why that can be a factor in getting in the way of being able to take care of ourselves adequately. But first, I would just highlight here, there's a lot of guilt going on and a lot of shame going on, which is really common. I think self-care is hard for the partners that I work with because they feel like if I'm taking care of myself, I'm not taking care of him or her, and he or she's going to go off the rails. The addicts I work with often say, I've been so selfish for so long. I don't deserve to take care of myself. This is all my fault. Um, a while ago, I was working with a man whose spouse was a sex addict, and he would always put out the threat of divorce and then never follow through. And I heard this again and again. That he'd say, "I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to get divorced," and then he wouldn't do anything about it. And so I actually asked him to go and meet with a divorce attorney, and I said, "Get a consultation and see what it would look like to divorce." And it turned out that he would threaten divorce because he was hurt and he was angry, but he was scared that financially he wouldn't be okay. He was scared that because he was a man, he wouldn't have any custody with his children. And meeting with this divorce attorney, the divorce attorney helped him to see, you would be just fine in retirement and financially. Here's what this would look like. And here's what custody actually looks like in these cases. And so you wouldn't lose your relationship with your children. And he stopped threatening divorce, but he also had in the back of his mind, this relationship may not work. And it shifted for him into this, how do I be a good partner for my spouse, regardless of the status of our relationship? Because they had children together. They had a life together. He really loved her family and felt actually closer to her family than his own. And so one of the things that shifted that self-care narrative is he said, whether we stay together or not, how am I going to be in a position to be a good partner for this person? And so that might be something to look at. Like, you may not feel deserving to keep the relationship. And in fact, keeping the relationship might be out of your hands. That's part of that powerlessness. When we get into recovery, we may recognize that the domino effect of our actions, we may not get to decide when those dominoes quit falling. But we can look at, who am I going to be on the other side? So if you're finding yourself depleted and anxious and angry because you're not taking care of yourself because you don't believe you deserve it, your partner deserves to have a good ex, especially if you have children together. Your partner deserves a good co-parent. So maybe you can start taking care of yourself out of that. I'm going to be a good co-parent. I'm going to be a good partner. I'm going to be here for my children. The other piece, and I'll circling back now to this enmeshment with the mother, if that's an issue that has not been worked on beyond just talking about it, we'll often see with the enmeshed men that I work with, we'll often see that they have a real difficulty in caring for themselves because they got the sense from the relationship with their mother or their father or both that there's not enough resources to go around. They may have had parents who were constantly depleted or over anxious and needed a lot of care and a lot of focus. And so the concept of taking care of yourself was a dangerous one, because your job was to take care of your mother if you're an enmeshed man. Your job was to take care of your father or your mother if you're an enmeshed woman. And so this idea that I put on my own oxygen mask first, not only does it feel weird, it might feel really disloyal. It might feel very wrong to do that. And if that's the case, I can't take care of myself because I feel disloyal to the person I should be taking care of. There's probably more to work on around the enmeshment issue. Ken Adams and I, who do these mother enmeshed men workshops, if that's the case, we'll often say, you moved out from mom, but mom didn't move out from you. And we've got to help mom move out of your psyche so you can spend your energy in your own life first, and then be able to give not just what's left, but to be able to give what you built to the people that you love and you choose to give it to. So that self-care, for a lot of reasons, can be difficult, but it doesn't have to stay that way forever. There can definitely be some work around the shame. There can be some reconfiguring of why I'm working on this. Maybe I don't feel deserving, but my children are really deserving of having a present father. My children are deserving of having parents who can co-parent effectively together. I think I say that the reason that gets you started in change doesn't have to be the reason that sustains the change, but the important thing is that you get started. So if you're feeling that disconnect from I can do this or I deserve this, find a reason that's strong enough for you to get started, and then see what that turns into. Or if you're having a hard time finding a reason, get some help from your sponsor, get some help from your therapist. Borrow somebody else's compassion for you for a little while until you can develop a little bit more of your own.
Yeah, a couple of things that struck me. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying too. With the chronic depression, if you are still feeling depressed, I hear that you're saying feeling the healthiest, but I mean, there may be a medical issue. So if you've not been, I mean, this is enough time that the initial recovery should have taken some foundation, and you should be feeling somewhat less depressed. So there could be a medical condition for that. And what I don't hear is that your wife is getting any support, regardless of whether you stay together. She has been through a betrayal, and I would love to see her getting some support, for those wounds, because even if you do split, which, who knows, but she deserves to have the wounds be on the way to healing as well. So, if she's not, then perhaps, offer her, without the, I want you to do this so that we can stay together, just say, yes, I know that this was terribly, traumatic, and, and I don't want you to carry that burden. So would like to help you get support. So they said, yes, she's seeing a CSAT-led therapy. That's good. There's some partner specialists too through APSATs, APSATs.org. They do a great job because they're betrayed partner specialists. CSATs are great for working with addicts, but not all of them are focused on the partner. So, but I'm going to assume she's in good hands for that. But if she needs a higher level of care, again, there are intensives and things, that may help her, find some healing. There's also the Betrayed Partner drop-in group on this website, and there will be one this Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific time. It's other people, supporting each other. That's a great place to be. And Dr. Rob will be on a webinar tonight at 5:00. There's lots of resources on this website as well. So.
That was a great catch, Tammy, with the depression and things. I think there's a lot that we go into recovery with that causes us suffering. And some of that suffering is not linked to our addiction or our behavior or our betrayal at all. It may be depression. So take a look at the list that you have going into, here's all my problems. And if there's any of those pieces of suffering that are unnecessary or that you could get some help with, give that to yourself. My opinion is nobody deserves to suffer unnecessarily. And some things like depression, I wouldn't say can be easily treated, but we can get some relief from suffering with things like medication or effective therapy or things like that.
Yeah, I know lots of people that was, they are just medicated enough to take away the chemical imbalance for them. So, like I would never know, except for that I perceive them to be able to be more present and not have that gloom. So, someone posted, although I feel better emotionally, spiritually, and physically now than I ever have been. Currently, I require so much alone and quiet, and I live a very simple life where I get very tired very easily. I'm working on my 12 steps ACA and doing EMDR. I've just started some medication to help too, and trying to be a healthy single parent to a teen son. Although I try to remind myself I have lived totally in a burned out state for most of my life, I have the fear that I will always feel this tired and need so much time. I would like more energy to do more. Do others go through this and come out the other side?
Yeah, I look at this list again and I'm thinking like I would be exhausted too. If that's what I was engaged in for my healing because I needed it, I would feel tired more often than not. Recovery as it stands in the beginning is not what it's going to look like long term. In the beginning, we often need a lot of stabilization. We may need something more intense than we need long term. And so I think it's helpful to look at this like initial phase as this is the startup. I need to get stable. I need to get a handle on some of my issues. And so it may require some more energy. For me, the purpose of putting that energy in the beginning of recovery is to open up the opportunities later. And, so you want to look at, are there opportunities opening up that I'm not willing to step into, opportunities that may put some energy back into my system or may help me feel more enjoyment? And if there are, talk with your sponsor or your therapist about that. I do think it's a really common experience to feel a bit burned out by recovery and healing work. So for me, I think Patrick Carnes calls these gentleness breaks. If you look at self-care, for me, I think that's just as important as hitting recovery hard is being able to reward ourselves for our hard work too. There can be, I know when I got into recovery, I tended to isolate and stay away from other people. And at first I really fought against that because I was like, no, this is the heart of why I'm sick and I've got to connect with people. And I discovered that I did need to connect with people, but I'm naturally an introvert. And so my connection with people needed to look different. I couldn't be in large groups and large parties, mingling with lots of people. I needed to connect with one or two people on a deep level. And that's the kind of connection that put energy back into my system. The other kind really depleted me. So as far as coming out on the other side, you may experience a shift in your levels of energy in addiction versus recovery, because in addiction, you may have lived in this altered state where you were, essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul with the energy. And that may not be a sustainable way of living. So there may be some adjustments in recovery. I know Dr. Rob says in recovery, we have to get used to living just a notch or two above boredom. And that's not long-term. That's just compared to the life you've been living. This one feels very boring, but it won't feel that way forever. And your nervous system will readjust. So yeah, I think recovery teaches us a lot about ourselves. The same person is saying that's totally it. And before I thought I was an extrovert, but I'm not at all. That's been a shock. So it sounds like recovery is bringing this reorientation of what caring for yourself actually looks like and what your limitations are. And I'll say as an introvert, I have a life that I love living and I don't feel deprived in any way because I've gotten to know what I need and I do that on a consistent basis and I'm happy. I'm not feeling like I'm missing out, but I think that's one of the opportunities that recovery brings us is to figure out better how we tick and what we need. And the beginning of recovery is a big readjustment time.
Well, and even just realigning, if you thought you were an extrovert and you needed all this engagement with all these people all the time, and you go, no, that's not really what I need, then still part of your mind might be going, but I should be out doing all these things with all these people, when your core stuff is going like, no, I need, I need the quiet, to really recharge. And I also hear when you're saying, I was completely depleted, I'm like, well, it's like filling the gas tank. If you only put, 50 cents worth of gas in, it's only going to go a little bit of, it's not going to go very far. You really need to completely fill the tank. And it's hard to do that, especially when you've been so depleted. So
I think fun is a key ingredient to energy levels, and fun does not have to mean that you're out, having a party or like climbing some big mountain. For me, like my Friday afternoon ritual of listening to music that I'm emotionally connected to, that's fun for me. And it doesn't cost me anything. It doesn't take any extra time. But it's something that I put in the system because it gives me energy. It kind of puts life back into me. And we don't have to be in 100% stable place or 100% figured out place to reward ourselves like that. So something to make room for might be something that's fun, recreational, because that's a different kind of energy and that's a different kind of healing.
Yeah. So next question. My boyfriend of 2 years ended our relationship back in October of 17. We lived together for about a year. He learned I betrayed him in April of 17. Long story short, we each saw our own therapist shortly after he found out, did a couples appointment, but no resolution was reached and our relationship was in a weird place. I became majorly depressed leading into October and started acting out in new ways. When he caught on to my new methods, he ended things with me shortly after. I went to a residential treatment facility for trauma and sex addiction a month after him breaking up with me, as I then realized I had a problem with sex. Now I'm in IOP. We are communicating on the phone with my CSAT on the line as well, trying to determine if we can come together as boyfriends again, or if not, if we can play a role in each other's life moving forward. My question is, how can I determine if being in a relationship with him is a good decision? I do not fully trust my judgment right now and not sure I'm trying to force a relationship with him because I am fearful of losing him romantically and what that would bring, or if I'm contemplating not being with him because I'm fearful of doing the work to bring us closer because of the shame I feel in regards to what I did to us.
Great question. Great question. I was just talking with my spouse yesterday about this, and what diving into something out of fear or diving into something out of guilt does for us. This is a lot of, I've got Mother Enmeshment fresh on my mind because we just finished a workshop in Phoenix, but that really is a big piece of that dynamic is, I'm considering going into this because I feel obligated or I feel scared of what's going to happen when I don't have it. And not to draw an unfair comparison or to say that your boyfriend is like this at all, because I'm sure he's not. But if you look at tactics that like organized crime uses to get people to pay protection money, it's like, I'd hate to see something bad happen. It's fear, it's coercion, it's things like that. So as you're looking at, is it a good idea for me to be in a relationship? For me, the proof is in the day by day feeling. Yes, relationships are hard and they do require us to give and to be vulnerable and to be uncomfortable. But if the majority of the feeling I feel when I interact with this relationship is shame or obligation or fear, or the feeling that I feel if I leave this relationship is just shame, obligation, and fear, this may be a relationship that is built on that, instead of there's actually a lot of positivity that we share. And when I work with couples, one of the things that I look for in that assessment is, do they have the spark? And that doesn't mean that spark is this really healthy flame, because a lot of people who make it to my office, there is no flame. But if they have that spark that's like, I remember the positive reasons why I'm attracted to you, I remember what our relationship does for me, then that couple's in a pretty good position to work on things. If it's, well, I just worry what would happen if I was alone, or I don't know what would happen to the kids, our business, whatever that's like. Like I said, fear and obligation and guilt are not good predictors of long-term change and success. So that could be really helpful to evaluate what's on the other side of that. Is there enough of the positive? That's another thing that's really important in the relationship realm, and this comes out of some of the Gottman research. They talk about this golden ratio of 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative interactions. Couples who make it and are happy have that as the ratio. Couples where they can predict divorce or separation with a high degree of accuracy are couples where the ratio's exactly the opposite, 5 negative interactions to every positive interaction. And sometimes that ratio is really dependent on our perspective. So if we have something that's known as negative sentiment override, that's no matter what happens, my negative feelings are going to override the feelings of what's going on. We may not have a good chance at a connected, safe relationship there, but that's something that can change too. So it can be important to look at what's my perspective I'm taking to this. If I'm just coming from doom and gloom and fear, I may have a hard time interpreting the positive aspects that we have. So there's a lot of different elements to look at here, but it's my personal opinion that nobody has to be in a relationship just because they fear being alone. Nobody has to stay in a relationship that's not working just because they feel guilty about what they did to hurt the other. I think our relationships have the potential to be the best when we're there because we want to be, and because we're freely giving what we have instead of feeling like we have to give out of obligation or to balance the scales to make up for the bad behavior that we've done.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking I've only had time to listen to about half of it, but the podcast with Dr. Stan Tatkin called We Do, and it talks about, if both people, are able to put themselves aside and focus on the relationship. And, I think that has to be, for some reasons, the right reasons. But if the two of you do have that spark that you're talking about and are able to find that this is the relationship we both want to work towards, then you stand a really good chance. We know lots of couples that are in recovery, that have gone down this path and have made it. But yeah, I mean, just for fear or guilt would not be an ideal reason to stay in a relationship. You're sharing your
Yeah.
screen. Did you know that? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I want to
Just
share
wanted to
this.
check.
I want to share this tool for helping folks to identify the reasons why I'm here or the reasons why I don't go. This is something that comes from Smart Recovery, which is a peer-to-peer recovery support group. It's free, like the 12 steps and things like that. But this is really, I use this a lot with clients when they're facing these decisions that feel really unclear. So you draw a quadrant like this, and you're going to look at the positives of, in this case, staying. You're going
I'm
to look at
not
the
seeing anything
positive.
drawing.
Oh,
Maybe others are, but I see a little pen up there, but I don't see it doing anything.
You know, maybe I have to draw with my finger. I'm using my.
Still
Let me try
don't see
drawing with.
anything.
Let me try drawing with my mouse here. Is that?
Nope, sorry.
Okay, well, I'll do it without drawing this then. So in one quadrant, you're going to look at the positives of staying. The next quadrant below that, you're going to look at the positives of going. And then you're going to look at the negatives of staying on the other side, and then the negatives of going. And you just list those answers out as honestly as possible. And this can be something that helps you kind of pull back from the fear of what if I make the wrong choice and move more into what's the reality that I'm in right now. That can help clarify some of the reasons why you're staying or some of the reasons why you're not going. And sometimes there's valid reasons there. But this is, when we started this webinar today, one of the things that came up when people said, when I'm not tired or angry or scared, I can think critically, I can have compassion, empathy. This is one of those tools that can slow that fear down and help us to think critically, to look at the whole picture. So, relationships are complicated, and decisions about relationships are even more complicated. So you definitely deserve to take the time you need to make sure that you're clear on your thinking, and that cost-benefit analysis can be a really helpful tool for getting out of your head and kind of getting all that in front of you. Maybe you'll see it from a different angle.
I like that, and when I was single between relationships, I created the list of, if I ever got in a relationship, this person would be these things and would not be these things. And it wasn't a super long list, but it was about values, and, it was just some of the things. And, I'm fairly active. So if they were a couch potato, that wouldn't work, so it was just some basic things. And when my husband and I met, he matched that list. Like I didn't have to give up on any particular thing or go, one of my big things is a non-smoker. Cause I just don't, I can't handle the smell of smoke. So that would be a deal breaker for me. So, and he met all of those criteria. So I was thinking, I like your quadrants of the staying or going, positives and negatives on both too. But I think even visualize, if you kind of blank on who would be an ideal fit for you, what would you be looking for? And then kind of compare, the person, and see if they fit. Because if you were involved with that person when you were not in your best frame of mind, i.e. you were under the influence of addiction, we don't make the best choices with that. So, so it may be he, lines them all up. But on the other hand, it may be that, that was just never a relationship that was ultimately supposed to be to last. So I don't know, but, and there'd be grieving the loss of a relationship, but there's also lots of, he might be the perfect person for you. And if you guys are both committed to the relationship, and, I love the quadrant thing. Like John said, do the quadrant thing. Benefits of staying, benefits of going. Negatives of staying, negatives of going. I think you'll get some clarity.
Yeah, I think there's a follow-up here, and I think this is key. Said something about, I'm not sure if I'm staying because I'm scared of leaving the relationship, but the work ahead scares me. That's valid. Because the work ahead is going to be hard, and you're going to be doing that work with someone who, for the relationship to work, needs to know a little bit about what's going on in there. And so you may have to look at, can I trust this person with my stuff? You may have to look at, do I feel like this relationship is worth it? And sometimes the answer is I don't know that this is the way forward for me. And that's okay. I being conflicted about, or having ambivalence about the decision of moving forward isn't always a problem. Sometimes it's I'm seeing the complexity of this very clearly, and it's not an easy decision. So I'm a big fan. The more complex the decision, the more time we deserve to make sure that our yes really means yes, or that our no really means no, and to not give a yes or a no until we feel like we can give that with certainty and clarity.
Yeah, I think that that's a really important thing. But there's no relationship that is totally easy. I think as we continue to grow and evolve as human beings, which I hope we all, are continuing to do that, we're going to, there's still going to be challenges. So it's finding somebody that you have, that you're, that my husband accepts my quirks, I accept his, and we mutually, work on our relationship. So, let's see. This person says, I've been thinking as we have been on, I'm an introvert. I require deep, meaningful conversations and interactions in small, quiet groups or one-on-ones. And I'm thinking I need to be more social and meet people to get this, as this is the way I used to socialize and feel burnt out and unhappy. Acceptance would help here, that the old way isn't fit anymore. And maybe I need to think of new ways to interact. Yay. And be okay that these relationships will come in time, and I need this time to rest, heal, and grow. Great. Oh, yeah. You added. Go ahead.
This book, I think, is really good at busting some of those myths about how wrong you are if you're introverted, and really practical suggestions for building a lifestyle that's more in line with your natural introversion, and being able to see that not so much as avoidance or whatever, but as like, this is what I need.
Yeah, I think that's great. So the book, Try Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, by Susan Cain, Cain. That's great. So, yeah, great. So is your wife an extrovert?
Oh, yeah.
I figured that.
She's very extroverted. And when I read that book, I said, you should read this. It will explain everything about me. And she's like, I don't know that I can let you off the hook with just saying you're an introvert. But we've worked on that, and we've reached some compromises. There's definitely, I can vacation in her extroverted world, and she can vacation in my introverted world.
Yes. Well, I was cracking up because I was like, my husband is totally that. So, but, and so it's all good, but that's probably a good balance. So,
yeah.
Okay, I think we are out of time. So thank you all. This has been recorded, so it will be available if you want to review any of that or share it with your friends. It will get posted, I don't know about later today, but probably by tomorrow, on the sexandrelationshiphealing.com website, which is where you can also find podcasts, including 2 that John has done with Dr. Rob, but a whole bunch of them, like the one I mentioned with Dr. Stan Tatkin, and lots of others. So for partners, for addicts, for everybody. So, and thank you for joining us. So, all right. See you next Monday.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.